Welcome to MELfeed.video. We are commencing a live web stream service via youtube.com from Melbourne, Australia. We currently conduct these streams mainly on Wednesday evenings, with other times to be added as more opportunities arise. Please visit our website at MELfeed.video for further information. This web video project presents old and new community TV programs. Please enjoy your stay with MELfeed.video.
Welcome to NAT Chat. My name is Harry Mellos, and today we have a very special guest, author and psychologist Dr. Helen Kalaboukis. Helen, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Harry.
Well, Helen, before we enter into some of the discussions of your work, tell us how you got into psychology and what were the factors that led you into this work?
I've always wanted to help people. I know it sounds a bit too much, but I've been good with people. I like talking with people. I want to see change. I want to see people improve, get their full potential in life. So from very young, I was very good in working with people.
Oh, wonderful. They do say that it takes a special person to enter the field of psychology, helping and counselling people. Is this a true statement? Do you think you need to have a type of character in order to work in this area?
I don't think you need to be special. I think you need to be listening to people, willing to be there for people, and I think that's all it takes. You don't have to be any special.
Yes, but I know you also as a person, Helen, and you're a very caring person, and I'm asking the question from the background where that you are you're a carer of people, you're concerned about others' welfare, and I'm just wondering whether that is the typical characteristics of a counsellor and a psychologist.
A counsellor, you need to be with people and listen to people and understand and try to assist them or guide them. Psychologists, not really. If you're doing research, if you're doing assessments, but you need to have good people skills.
You do, wonderful. And just a simple question: when you tell people the line of work in psychology that you do, how do they react? Do they speak to you differently once you've told them what you do?
Oh, in parties, in parties they come and say, "Oh, I've got this problem and I've got this other problem." So generally, they want to tell you their problems, their secrets. It's not good on parties because you want to be there not to hear problems. But otherwise,
what about in the social area? When you actually have a discussion with someone socially, and you tell them the line of work that you do they react differently? Are they more protective?
They're interested. They want to know what I'm doing, how long I've been doing the work, how experienced I am, what sort of type of work or people I see.
Yes.
So people are interested.
Yes, but they don't act differently towards you.
Sometimes they do.
Okay.
Sometimes they're careful.
That's the interesting part.
I've met a CEO a few weeks ago, and he was pouring the water, and he says, "I know now you're looking at my motor skills." And I said, "No, I don't." "And you're looking how good I am." I said, "No, I don't. We don't evaluate people all the time. We don't assess people.
Yes.
Not until we have to do it."
Yes, of course.
But people, some people are very careful.
Yes, and how do you address that? Do you defend yourself, or do you? How do you actually?
Defense won't help. I'll just say I'm here. I don't work after hours. If I'm for a meeting, I don't assess people. I do it only when it's my job and people are in my office and we have to do the real work. Otherwise, I'm just a normal person.
Yes.
I leave the psychologist behind. I don't need it.
And what about at home, when you finish a day at home? How does the whole day affect the family environment? How do you actually handle that?
Oh, probably the first years. The first years, yes, you try to, and you trained very well not to take all the issues at work to home. But sometimes you can't help it, especially if you have very difficult cases. You have some things with you. Now, after 25 years of working as a psychologist, I'm very experienced. I leave it all at work, go home. I don't think they will ever affect the way I am at home, or with my friends, or with my social things.
So you've adjusted, and you're able to leave work at work and at home.
Yes,
Well, that's very good, because I know that psychologists and to a smaller degree counsellors have a difficult time adjusting from work to home, especially at the beginning.
The first years, yes.
Yes.
Yes. After a few years, you experience, you know, this is work, this is home, this is social life.
Okay. And have there been any times in some of the cases that you hear and help people with where it was difficult to let go, it was difficult, and you've brought in a couple of the assessment or the essence of what was going on back to a different environment, whether it's home or elsewhere?
Well, when I was working with abused women and children, that was very hard work. I did it for 3 years. It was very difficult. There were times I could carry that with me, all the things I've seen and I've heard, and all the abuse that so many women and so many kids have suffered. So that was very hard.
I'm sure it would. Abuse women, did you say?
Yeah.
Yes, and that. How long did you last in that area?
3 years.
3 years, and it was tolling on you, was it?
It was. At the end, yes, it was very much. You need to do debriefing, you need to have good supervision. There's so much you receive, you are the receptive. You receive a lot of this, and you need to do something with that. Supervision usually is very good, or debriefing.
Or debriefing, yeah. Oh, did you see the warning signs for yourself, or were you told that maybe by your family that hey mum, you know, we see there's a difference now in you, or how did you see the warning signs?
Mainly at work. Although my kids were very clear, they didn't want a psychologist at home, they wanted a mom at home, so I kept all my work in the office. But yeah, it was good supervision, good management, that they realized I was burning out, and I changed area. Yes. It is a very difficult area.
And how long have you been working as a psychologist, Helen?
25 years, Harry. It's
25
a long
years.
time. It's
well, you don't look a day over 40.
Thank you. I started at 15.
Yeah, well done, well done. And what area? You've also lectured in any area? Or,
yeah.
Yes?
I was lecturing at Monash.
At Monash, yeah.
Yes.
How long was that for?
5 years.
Yes.
And I was a manager at Swinburne for quite a few years, actually, 14 years, of the counselling service. So I was supervising a lot of psychologists. And we had a lot of international students. Very interesting
Oh,
to look after students. But they were a lot of highly functioning groups. So it was very different from abused women and children to highly functioning students of a university.
I see.
Very different work.
It sounds very, very interesting. We've just ran out of time for the moment. We're going to go into a break, and we'll be back shortly with Helen Kalaboukas, author and psychologist.
The thing I love about Australia is our spirit of mateship and togetherness, and whether it's a drought, a flood or a bushfire, when times are tough, Australians stick together. Well, I'll be spending Australia Day at Tamworth with 40,000 country music mates. It brings people together to celebrate our music and our great country.
Get together on Australia Day. Go to australiaday.org.au to find out how.
There's a difference between forgetting something once and forgetting it many times. There's a difference between forgetfulness and dementia. Talk to someone who understands. Call the National Dementia Helpline on 1800 100 500.
Come on, fellas. Let's get down there.
Hang on. Where's Dave?
Oh, hey fellas. What do you think? Pretty cool, eh?
Real men look out for each other. Don't let your mates drink and drown.
If you choose to speed,
you could ruin lives.
Someone else's, your family's, or your own.
Choose not to instead.
The right choice could save someone's life.
Proud supporters of safety in our community.
GMCU and Southern Cross Austereo.
Welcome back to NAT Chat. With us is Dr. Psychologist Helen Kalaboukis. And Helen, I believe that you are an author of a book titled Emotional Intelligence and Leadership. Can you tell us a little bit about what does that mean? Do you need to be intelligent to have this book, to read this book?
Not at all. Although it's about a research, a training program we've done at Swinburne for 5 years. It was a training program we developed with Professor Constell, and then we provided the training for a lot of people, about 300 people, and then we evaluated the program to see whether or not we can improve emotional intelligence. The research showed that yes, we can improve, which is the good news really, yes. Because academic intelligence, intellectual, we cannot really improve, whereas emotional intelligence we can.
Yes. Okay, just for the layperson out there, what is really emotional intelligence? What is that? How can you briefly describe what it is and what it does?
It is a kind of intelligence. We know we have a lot of different intelligence.
Yes.
The academic, the musical intelligence. The emotional is how we experience, express our emotions. How good are we to perceive the emotions of other people? Let's say in a meeting, let's say with someone we converse with, and how well we can manage our own negative emotions and how well we can manage the emotions of other people as well.
I see. So what I'm hearing is that our emotions have their own intelligence that enables us to actually perform certain tasks through that emotion. Is that what you're saying?
Our emotions are the way they are, but we can understand them better, express them better, or learn to manage them better, especially negative emotions like anger, like sadness.
I see.
And then, of course, that goes then to depression, to anxiety. Fear is a big emotion and brings anxiety. So if we learn to manage the emotions better, mental health, psychological health improves.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about the program in itself. How does the program enable normal people who are listening, our listeners today, how can they know more about what the subject's about?
It basically says that we can we can improve our emotional intelligence, the way we experience our emotions, express them, the way we manage negative emotions, and therefore we can be better persons. And it also looks into leadership. It looks as to whether we can train better leaders. We can have better leaders, managers, and therefore we can have a better world if everybody is performing better at a personal level or at a community group level.
And how is it about regulating the emotions that we already have? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. The emotions are there. We can regulate them better.
Yeah, and not allow our emotions to take control over the situation, but actually be in control of our emotions. Is that what you're saying?
The negative emotions.
The negative emotions.
The emotions that don't do any good in our lives. Whereas we can accentuate, we can appreciate positive emotions, we can be more positive, show that in our lives with other people. They say, and there's a lot of literature on this, that people can be more successful at the personal level, at the work level, in their social life.
I see.
So we can be better people. That's what.
So you're saying that we can use these emotional intelligence and leadership to strengthen and transform people by a program or by learning more about what it is? Yeah? How can people be transformed? How can they be built up in their emotions in order to be more adaptive to normal situations?
Well, first they need to want to change.
Yes.
They need to want to improve. And if they want to, that's all. I mean, as a counsellor, you know that if they want to change, they can improve, they can have a better life, enjoy life more, be more productive, succeed more in their work, in the job, whatever they do.
I see. And the program, is it a period of time? How long does the program take? You talked about a program that you developed.
The training is about 3 full days or 8 2-hour sessions. It is a product of Swinburne.
Okay.
It has all the people who have done it. They've found they learned a lot. It improved their personal life, their relationships, and their job, their career.
Oh, great! So our listeners are able to tap into some of these programs that you've helped establish, and are able to use it for their benefit. But there's a prerequisite from what I'm hearing, and that is that they need to be wanted, or they need to want to transform and to change.
Yeah.
Because all of us, there's parts of all of us, as I'm sure you are well aware, that perhaps we don't like about ourselves, and we wish that we behave differently, and we wish that we were able to control our emotions. This program helps the listeners and those people who have issues like this?
Yes, definitely. I believe we should start teaching that to a lot younger ages, like primary school.
Okay.
If kids learn not to be afraid of the emotions, to be able to express positive emotions, to manage difficult emotions like being hurt or being sad or feeling a big loss, because kids are very sensitive, then I believe we're going to have better people, better functioning individuals later on in life. But I believe we need to start a lot earlier in primary school.
Okay, so it's something that
it's never too late.
Yeah, it's never too late. Yeah,
it's never too late. But
we can start. It gives us hope as well for a little older children.
Yes, grown-up children. Yeah, but yeah.
Could you just give me a little insight as to when you're dealing with young children? You say the program can begin that early. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
What would children of say 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? How would they begin? Maybe older?
Primary school.
Primary school.
Primary
okay,
school.
So primary school. How would they begin to use the program of emotional intelligence and perhaps leadership?
At this point, we've trained teachers, a lot of teachers, to go there and teach the kids. So, first of all, the teachers need to be trained.
I see.
To be able not to be afraid of the emotions, to be able to express emotions, encourage the kids, express positive and negative emotions in a functioning way.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about positive and negative emotions, but we've run out of time. We need to go for a break. We'll see you shortly. We'll have a short break and return back to NAT Chat.
Do you currently have a community service announcement on free-to-air television? If you do, you can now submit it to us as well via our website at MELfeed.video. We have lots of time to fill on these broadcasts, and we are sure to give your announcement a great run on MELfeed.video.
Every day, in many ways, the Royal Flying Doctor Service takes the finest care to Australia's furthest corners so that all Australians can enjoy the best of health. The Royal Flying Doctor Service has been taking care of Australians for over 80 years. But we still need your help to continue providing emergency rescue and essential health care to remote and rural communities. Make a donation or become a supporter and help keep the Flying Doctor flying.
Every new line means 2 more hands. Join us, lions.org.au.
Welcome back to NAT Chat. With us is author and psychologist Helen Kalabukas. Helen, earlier on we were discussing positive and negative emotions. Can you give us an example of what these emotions, positive and negative, are?
In simple words, positive emotions are the emotions that make us feel good, like joy, like enthusiasm, like happy, satisfied. And negative emotions are the ones who don't make us feel good. And the very healthy emotions, like being sad, being angry, feeling lost or afraid. Fear is another basic, very basic emotion. And this can affect us. And they are part of our lives, but at some point can be make our life very difficult, our work very difficult, or our relationships.
Okay.
So when they start affecting us, we need to do something about it.
I see. So what you're saying is that we can overdose in negative emotions, and it doesn't help us live. But if I asked you a question related to positive emotions, can an overdose of positive emotions also have a negative effect? Or do we need more of it?
I think we need more of it. We don't learn to feel good.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. We learn everything else but feel good from very young age.
Yes.
I think it's about learning emotions. We learn the negative. We learn to be afraid or sad or jealous or competitive. They all, and then we don't learn to feel good.
Okay. Well, pardon my skeptical approach, but I'm just wondering, when you have lots of positive emotions, does that promote like self-centeredness or anything like that from your experience, or can you clarify that for me? I'm just wondering.
Not to the expense that we don't think of other people and we sort of become so selfish and so self-centered.
Okay.
But I believe it's good to have good, positive emotions. It's important to feel good. It's very good for our body and our mind.
Wonderful. And what happens when we have a lot of negative emotions? What are the symptoms, and what can that lead us to?
There is research saying that it leads us to bad health.
Physical bad health.
Physical bad health.
Yeah.
A lot of psychosomatic illnesses are related to that. We cannot achieve as much in our life. We don't enjoy life as much. Our relationships suffer a lot.
Yeah.
So it does have a great effect.
That is so interesting. So I'm hearing that you're saying negative emotions can have physical effects, actual physical effects.
Yeah.
So how we feel affects our physical being.
Yes.
Yes. Well, that's very interesting, because normally when people get a symptom of a physical symptom, they never relate it to emotions. But you're saying they are collaborated. Is that right?
Anxiety is fear, and make people have difficulties in breathing. They can't breathe. They cannot function very well. Sometimes when it gets worse, they can't leave the house. They can't go to work. They can't talk with other people. All these anxieties are very related to fear.
Okay. And what are some basic steps to feeling good about ourselves and not to continue in that negative state?
Well, the basic is it's possible to feel good. We need to learn to feel good more often, to allow ourselves to have positive feelings. I think we need to teach it at a young age, or as grown-ups we need to do that more. Physical exercise helps. Social life helps. And then if things get worse, we need to see a specialist. We need to see a counselor, a psychologist, before it gets too bad or out of control.
And how do people recognize that it's getting out of control? When it affects their everyday living? Or?
Yeah. It affects their relationships, their work. They feel unhappy, they feel stressed, they worried all the time, they sad, they get into depression.
Yeah.
The earlier they do something about it, the better it is. It's easier also to overcome it.
Well, that's a wonderful topic, Helen, because I'm thinking there's a lot of viewers out there who think that seeing a psychologist has a stigma attached of mental disorder in a psychic way. But every one of us can experience positive or negative emotions. And you don't have to be mentally insane to see a psychologist or a counsellor. Is that right?
It is very right. A lot of people confuse with psychiatrists and mental illness and the stigma of mental illness. But we all go through crises in our lives. We all go through stages that we need to talk to someone. If we have good friends and supportive friends, that's great. Sometimes we need to talk to a more specialized person. And there's no stigma. All normal people may need at some point to speak to someone else. Psychologists speak to other psychologists if we are stressed.
Right. Yes.
Or we're going through a difficult time. Life has a lot of challenges.
And thank you, Helen. That makes a lot of sense. But you also mentioned that there is the family that can contribute positively to our well-being and to our positive emotions. How important is our family interaction that leads us to feeling good about ourselves?
Family is very important, but the lucky people have good supportive families, and a lot of people don't have good supportive families. That's how it happens.
Yeah.
We can analyze that, but I don't think we have. So if they have good families, that's excellent. If not, it's good to have good friends, supportive friends. But because people this age, we're very isolated. A lot of people feel lonely. A lot of people don't have other people.
Yes.
It's very important to reach out, to go to a group, talk to someone.
Yes.
There's always a way out. There's always things we can do to improve our lives.
Yeah, isolation, I'd like to talk more about that, but briefly, isolation, what does isolation bring to normal everyday people?
It's a trap. A lot more people these days feel more isolated. Then they get into depression, then it can lead to other bigger problems, mental health problems, so it's important to stop as early as possible. There's always people out there, the groups.
Okay.
People need to reach out.
And Helen, if some of our viewers need to come and see a psychologist like yourself, what would be the procedure? Would they need to go and see a GP first for a referral and then come and see you? Is that how it works?
Through Medicare.
Through Medicare, yeah.
Through Medicare, they provide up to 10 sessions every year, so there's help there. Costs nothing.
Yes, so it is beneficial for everyday living, and it's provided by Medicare.
Yeah, for serious problems, of course, but there's so many people out there with depression.
Yeah. Thank you, Helen. I'm hoping that there is listeners out there who take your advice and seek help if they're feeling bad about themselves. So thank you for the program. Thank you for being part of NAT Chat.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and to all our viewers, thank you for another week, and we'll hopefully see you again next week.
Imagine not seeing the world you live in. Macular disease is Australia's leading cause of blindness. Donate now to Macular Disease Foundation Australia. Call 1800 111 709 or visit mdfoundation.com.au.
MELfeed.video.
Good afternoon, my name's Gabrielle Pute and I'm here in Westminster, London, and today joining me is Labor MP Mr Jeremy Corbyn. Good afternoon, Jeremy. Thanks for your time today because I know you're very busy.
You're very welcome. It's nice to see you here.
It is nice to be here, believe you me. Now, for the benefit of our audience, Jeremy, you've been a member of the UK Parliament since 1983, 32 years. now, and if I were to list everything that you've done, all the key leading roles that you've had in your political career, I think we'd be here all day. But just to mention a few of them, you were the national chairman of the Stop the War Coalition.
I still am, yeah.
Yet you still are. You're the national vice chairman of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, and the chair of its parliamentary group in Westminster. You've also been very active in many human rights cases and have taken a particular interest in defending nations in Latin America as vice chairman of the All Parliamentary Group for Latin America, and the secretary of the All Parliamentary Group for Mexico, the secretary for the All Parliamentary Group for Venezuela, and also you're a member of the All Party Groups for Brazil, the Caribbean, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic. And of course you've also campaigned to defend Argentina against the predatory vulture funds that were trying to loot the country. Now, obviously being involved in those groups, you would know the BRICS meeting that took place in Brazil in July 2014, where they inaugurated the dramatic escalation of the BRICS process overall. So how do you specifically see that impacting Latin America as a total?
I think it's fascinating looking at the process in Latin America. I'm very involved in Latin American issues and have been ever since I went there as a 19-year-old when I was 19 in the 60s. I'd been working in the Caribbean as a youth worker and teaching. Then I went to the Caribbean, from the Caribbean to Latin America, and I went all around the continent on my own. And it was a fascinating time. This was a time of military government and American domination of the whole continent. Brutal. And this was just before President Allende was elected in Chile and 3 years before he was assassinated. Interesting period. Take it forward now, Latin America is a totally different place in that there is a greater division between North and South American continent than there's ever been. There's less direct US control over the economies or politics or military of most of Latin America than there was in the past. There is a huge political debate between, broadly speaking, the ALBA Pact countries of Cuba, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, and the more pro-American ones such as Peru, and to some extent Brazil, although that comes and goes, and very close American domination in Mexico. So if we take the things separately, first of all, in the case of Mexico, massive human rights abuses continuing. 100,000 people died or disappeared in the past decade and a bit. The 43 students that disappeared from Ayotzinapa were an example of how bad it is, but they are only part of the whole story. And last 2 weeks ago we had the visit of President Peña Nieto from Mexico to Britain, extolling the virtues of a market economy, selling off of natural assets or exploitation of natural assets to British companies, and the marketisation of the Mexican economy in line with NAFTA. So they see there an economic relationship between the USA, Canada and Mexico, which is actually very damaging to the interests of small farmers and the working class in Mexico, not to mention those that live in a marginal existence. Mexico is not part of the BRICS process, but there is some, not a huge amount, some Chinese involvement in Mexico, but not as much as in other countries. Central America, there is a very big Chinese involvement. They're funding the possibility of a new canal through Nicaragua, and they have funded quite a lot in Costa Rica. Move further south, and what you've got there is a government in Venezuela under pressure from the right in Venezuela to try and create problems and shortages and difficulties for them. But very interesting, the ALBA Pact works in terms of promoting trade through reducing the gap between the rich and the poor and improving the life chances of the poorest young people. That's got to be a good thing. The BRICS process is essentially an alliance, as we know, of Russia, China, Brazil, South Africa. What does it mean for the continent as a whole? I suspect it means in the long term much larger level of Chinese investment throughout South America and much greater trade with China. Because the possibilities of increasing trade between Latin America and South Africa, for example, are fairly limited since they're broadly producing similar kinds of things. Ditto Russia. It's China that is the big consumer of natural resources, and Latin America is the big consumer of industrial and other products. So I see the development in that way.
And of course, I think one of the things with China, and of course the Brazilian arrangements, there is the question of the advantage of the other, right? Which of course, as you said, the industrial, the consumption of industrial goods coming back from China, because the BRICS, I think, as a whole, is looking at that collaborative exchange. It's a cultural paradigm shift for the world. Do you see it in that context?
Yes, it's an interesting historical reversal of trends. We think of history in far too short-term process. We think of history as the last 50 years, the last 100 years, and occasionally a bit longer than that. Essentially, we look at a period when there's been European economic and cultural domination of the planet, which came with European expansion principally in the 18th and 19th centuries. It started before that, principally then. And the relative decline of China from being incredibly powerful in the 15th, 16th century to its lowest point, which was in the 19th century when it was virtually colonized by Europeans. What we see is a historical reassertion of China's role in the world. And because technology, communication, and everything has moved on quantumly since that time, it's going to be a very interesting century that we move into, and people are going to have to reckon with China's economic power. And in a sense, their economic model has been very clever in that they have a relatively controlled and closed economy, they have a fixed exchange rate, they can depress the value of their own currency, suck in loads of dollars, and now have more dollars than the USA. It's very clever.
The overall political situation globally is extremely fragile. And of course, you were you fiercely opposed the Iraq War in 2003. And of course in 2006 you were one of 12 Labor MPs to back the call by the Welsh Party, Plaid Cymru, and of course the Scottish Nationalist Party for an inquiry into the Iraq War, which among other things led to calls for the impeachment of Tony Blair for having lied outrageously, for starting the war in the first place. Now, again, we have a steady escalation of NATO troops and manoeuvres in Eastern Europe, and of course in Ukraine you had the whole coup d'etat, which was run by the far-right, extreme right-wing groups, then you had Russia being named as the aggressor, right, in terms of the whole Ukrainian situation, yet it was, foisted upon them the other way around. So we're on we're potentially on the verge of a thermonuclear, crisis. Now, you've spoken out strongly against this escalation and said that NATO should be disbanded. But how much is this war danger understood at present in the United Kingdom, and what actions are being taken against it, and how do you see the alternative of peace through development, as Pope Paul VI once put it, and it really is embodied, in the BRICS process. That idea is embodied there in terms of the collaboration for economic development, peace through economic development, as opposed with what we're getting from the UK and the United States now.
A number of things. That aspect of the BRICS development is the good one because it is an alternative strategic view of the world which doesn't include the United States or Europe, and that is culturally, historically very, very significant. That part of the BRICS process I absolutely welcome. What concerns me is the level of exploitation of natural resources that goes with some of that development. So it's not a zero-sum game. On the questions of global peace, I think there's two significant dates, 1989 and 2001. 1989, fall of the Berlin Wall, collapse of Comecon, collapse of the Warsaw Pact, collapse of the Soviet Union, and a period of mass privatization and marketization in Russia, and a period of deep corruption in Russia for which we're all still paying a price. 1989-90, with the collapse of the Warsaw Pact, should have been the time for Gorbachev's vision of a common European home, should have been a time for the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe to take over. And instead, NATO panicked, because NATO is a very powerful organization. It has a North Atlantic center to its ideal, that's where it comes in the name, but it also is a massive cooperative buyer of arms, particularly from the US and to some extent European arms industries. It is a self-perpetuating power structure. It panicked in 1990 because suddenly their whole raison d'etre of opposing the Soviet Union had disappeared. In English terms, the fox had been shot. There was nothing to chase anymore. And so I just remember the early 90s, these endless strategic breakfasts one was invited to discuss the possible threats of the future. And they kept running computer models about where the war threat was coming from next. They were sort of looking for it. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? How do we justify our existence? And I just remember a long meeting we had with British Aerospace, as it's now then called BAE Systems now, about the future of an aircraft factory near London. And I was making the point that surely we should be pleased with the drop in defence contracts, and what we needed was a process of arms conversion. And the gentlemen, and they were all gentlemen from BAE, said, yeah, we can make anything. We don't have to make weapons. We don't have to make warplanes. We can make anything. But we do need the orders to do it. We do need a arms conversion process. It never happened. It never happened. And NATO continued to look around for a strategic reason. And instead of using that opportunity of the 1990s for disarmament, for détente, for arms conversion exercise and a more positive role for Europe in the world, what instead happened was a increasing of American power in the world. We saw the beginnings through Jesse Helms and then others in the USA of the Heritage Foundation, then the Project for New American Century, and then came 2001. Now Bush, if ever there was the wrong man in the wrong place at the wrong time, in the wrong occasion historically, it's got to be George W. Bush as President of the USA in September 2001. Obviously what happened was appalling, the World Trade Center and the deaths that went with it. The response of invading Afghanistan, which was of course amazingly successful. It wasn't very difficult for the US Air Force to bomb and invade Afghanistan. The thing is, just like Russia before them, just like the British before them, just like everybody else before them, they couldn't hold the ground. And the British and Americans are now forced to withdraw with their tails between their legs 14 years later. Thousands dead, billions spent, and the war spread all over the region. We then had Iraq, we then had Libya, we had Mali, we've had war after war after war. And in 2006, we had the NATO summit in Lisbon, which gave itself an out-of-area status, which gave itself a global role. So we have NATO developing into a global role, essentially protecting Western commercial interests and fighting for resources around the world, and becoming a creature of the arms manufacturers. And the schism between the perceptions of Islam and the perceptions of Western Romano-Christian tradition are now as bigger than they've ever been, and the bitterness is worse and worse than it's ever been.
You fought against the relentless expansion of the draconian laws of anti-terrorism in the United Kingdom. And in an interview you gave in December 2014, I should say, you said that, and I quote here, "While ISIL, or ISIS, didn't come from nowhere, it didn't all emerge in a few weeks. It's been growing for a very long time, it's very well armed, very well equipped, and very well financed." End of quote. Now, you went on to elaborate that somewhere along the line that money has been transacted from the world's banks in general, from the world's arms industries, as you were just expressing, and much of that equipment, one suspects, may have well come from a combination of the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia. And you said that although military force has to be used against ISIS, you said even more importantly, there has to also be a concerted pressure on ISIS funding and sources of arms, because that's the key to it all. Would you like to elaborate that further in terms of what you were...
ISIS is very well funded, as I said, and very well resourced and quite well organised, and it appears to be emanating as much from the huge supply of Western weaponry into the Gulf region. Think of the amount of arms sales that have gone to Saudi Arabia. $2 billion worth of arms through the Al Yamani arms contract alone to Saudi Arabia. British base now being constructed in Bahrain, first one for many, many years, expansion eastwards, and arms sales to UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, all across the piece. And ISIS forces that control parts of Iraq, where do they come from? They come from the deliberate breakup of the Iraqi army after the invasion. They come from the looseness of weapons supply in Iraq at that time. So to some extent it's a reassertion of the old Ba'athist regime in Iraq, because they were never included in any post-invasion. They were never included in any post-invasion process. And we need to examine that in some detail. We also need to examine the funding issues surrounding it, because they're selling oil quite clearly. That money is being processed somewhere. Which Western banks are involved in transferring that? HSBC got done over for transferring vast amounts of drug-related money in Mexico. Who's going to get done over for all this ISIS money that's floating around? And so I would look at it two ways. One is to cut off the supply of arms and money that ISIS develop, but also some sort of process that the people in Iraq and Syria feel a sense of security in their lives, rather than being stuck between a war between the rather shadowy leadership of ISIS and the more obvious and open leadership of the USA and the West in propping up a government that's selling off the oil resources very cheaply. It's not a happy position to be if you're a poor person stuck anywhere in Syria or Iraq. As to the question, the wider question concerning Saudi Arabia and its involvement, well, that is a very important one, because the British involvement with Saudi Arabia is huge. Historically, the Foreign Office got it wrong. They thought there was no oil in Saudi Arabia, there was only oil in the Gulf states. So they handed this massive area they named Saudi Arabia to the current royal family there, who later discovered there was oil there. It was all a bit late for the British, and so basically American oil companies got it rather than BP. So BP are much more powerful in Iran and the other areas than they are in Saudi Arabia, even now. And we've created this huge, powerful force, massively armed, deeply abusive of human rights, and it's all very muted. Any criticism of Saudi Arabia is very muted. I raise Saudi human rights abuses the whole time in Parliament and at the UN and all these places, and they say, well, hang on, they're a big arms buyer. Well, sorry, if you believe in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the name is in the title, universal. And so I think we have to be far far more assertive on human rights issues, but quite honestly, every government to some extent tailors its human rights concerns to its economic and military interests. In the case of the West, to the most extraordinary degree. And in the case of Saudi Arabia, ministers glibly tell me here that they welcome the direction of travel of Saudi Arabia, and quiet diplomacy is more effective than making a noise outside. I'm not sure about that. I think you promote change by making a lot of noise about human rights abuses and standing up for people that are being abused, and that is what I spend my time doing.
Went on a more positive note, because it is interconnected with the crisis we're seeing in the Middle East. Because in 2013 you voted for Glass-Steagall, and this was, which was one of the reasons we came to the United Kingdom, because it was such an extraordinary debate that happened on the floor of the House of Commons, that the world, a lot of people missed it in the world, and I'm sure even here in the United Kingdom. But would you like to say something on the necessity for Glass-Steagall, you know, which would change everything?
Well, Glass-Steagall was origins in the USA in the 1930s. Yeah. The separation of speculative banking from normal savings banks and that sort of process, and it was a revolution in the USA. 5,000 banks had already collapsed at the start of the recession. And what Glass-Steagall did was separate out and give a degree of regulation to banking to protect depositors, so that people had confidence to invest in a bank that they knew wasn't going to run off and buy futures in cocoa oil, coffee or whatever, anywhere around the world, highly speculative, or property speculation. Yeah. The systematic deregulation of the banking systems of the West following the Reaganomics of the 1980s, Thatcher over here, and what was known as Big Bang in the City of London, when all this regulation was taken away and the banks were encouraged to be speculative. It was like reinventing the South Sea bubble of the 18th century. And that resulted in a lot of loss and a lot of misery for a lot of people. And what Glass-Steagall does is creates a secure savings environment that people can put their money and know that it's going to be okay, and they're going to get it back, and they're going to get some kind of reasonable return on it from inevitably slightly risky investment banking. You actually need to have investment banking to get development and to get growth, but it needs to be regulated, it needs to be publicly controlled, and there needs to be a public participation in it. Yeah. If we want to build housing for the people of Islington who desperately need it, we need to borrow money somewhere to do it. We either get it through, in Britain, what used to be called, well, still is called the Public Works Loans Board, or we borrow the money on the private money market. But that is, I would argue, a secure investment. If somebody wants to invest in something speculative, I don't want my council housing put at risk by that, with a bank foreclosing and demanding all its money back straight away. That's the danger of it. So it's a question, really, of public ownership, public control and public accountability. You start with Glass-Steagall to separate out these two arms, but you move on to ensure a socially responsible banking system. We have a high degree of public ownership presently, temporarily, of banking shares in Britain. This government is determined to sell them off as quickly as possible. I think instead we should convert them into equity in the banks and maintain a high degree of public control of what the banks do, and a golden share option when they can't make major decisions without public authority to do so. That would make for a much more stable economy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeremy.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, thank you very much.
I was in my 40s when I was first diagnosed with bowel cancer. George, my son, was 6 years old at that time. These days, like people of his age, he's very busy, but he still needs to find the time to get to know his bowel cancer risk. Is that right, George?
Yes, Dad. Bowel cancer affects 1 in 12 Australians, young and old, and is our second biggest cancer killer. But if caught early, bowel cancer is treatable and beatable. My dad is living proof of that. So get to know your bowel cancer risk. Talk to your pharmacist or GP about screening. Protect yourself and the ones you love. Go to lovemyfamily.org.au.
Hush, little baby, don't you cry. Daddy's gonna sing you a lullaby. When you're sleeping safe and sound, you've got the proudest dad in town. I remember when I first saw you, your heart beating as you grew. We'll read you stories to help you dream. Your mommy and I are a perfect team. I can't wait to hear you sing or watch as you put on a wedding ring. One day you'll have children too. Remember the times I sang to you.
We reckon one of the most powerful things in the world is this sausage, because a sausage can do just about anything. It helps people to walk, see and hear, supports families after fire, drought and flood, and even helps plant trees in our community. Our sausages are working to cure cancer, helping farmers in tough times, and connecting people who are new to a community. And at the same time that they're doing all that, they're nurturing the leaders of tomorrow while building friendships that last a lifetime. Yep, these humble sausages are more powerful than you can believe. They're working wonders in our community. And at Lions, so can you. Lions Australia, we serve more than sausages.
Joy, well-being, community, inclusion.
Special Olympics is a global movement for people with an intellectual disability, creating a world of inclusion and community through sport, where every person is accepted and welcomed, regardless of ability. One athlete, one volunteer, one family member at a time, helping to make the world a better place. Join the inclusion revolution by supporting Special Olympics.
And choose to include.
I'm able to dream, I'm able to smile, I'm able to grow, and I'll go the extra mile, one day at a time. So put your hands together, we can change lives forever. Together, we're able.
Able Australia. Together, we're able.
If you choose to text while driving,
You could ruin lives.
someone else's, your family's or your own,
Choose not to instead.
the right choice could save someone's life.
Proud supporters of safety in our community.
GMCU and Southern Cross Austereo.
MELfeed.video.
Hallelujah. Om
आदमी ओम
Hello and welcome to this week's Harmony in Diversity, a program that endeavours to encourage harmony and diversity across the wide range of faiths and beliefs here in Victoria by showcasing individuals and groups involved in interfaith and multi-faith activities. This week we continue our look at the people involved with the Centre of Melbourne Multi-Faith and Others Network. Uncle Reg Blow is an Aboriginal elder and the current president of Common. Norm Curry caught up with him recently after the planting of a peace tree in the city of Whittlesea to celebrate World Interfaith Harmony Week.
My name's Reg Blow. I'm an elder in the Melbourne Aboriginal community. Now I wear the tag of uncle, and I accept that, and people just call me uncle. And I take that as a matter of respect, and it sort of like lifts my confidence, I suppose, to speak as I do on many forums. And in a way, you know, like I sort of earned that right to speak as an elder because I've been involved with Aboriginal affairs for 40 odd years in that time, and I've been at all sorts of levels. You know, I've been advisor to the government, I've managed community organisations, community-based organisations, and I've managed peak body organisations. I've operated on local government, state government, Commonwealth government. And so, you know, like I've been around the trap, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I suppose just my tribal background, I'm a Murray, not a Koori. So I come from Queensland. My mother's country, whom I identify with, is Triple N Lang Bang Gorang, and that's our clan group, and then tribal. And then my dad's country, I don't identify with it because I don't know it, but he's Kumbin Mary and Yugenberg, so it's the Gold Coast area, where my mum's Bundaberg. I'm married to a Yorta Yorta woman. We've got 4 lovely kids. We've got 4 grandkids now.
Clearly, you're qualified to speak on this next question, which I realise is a huge question. But you hear the reference to Aboriginal spirituality. What does that actually mean? What's it mean to you?
Well, it's a question that's always being asked of me. Aboriginal spirituality. I believe it's that part of me that is my connection to family, community, environment, and the universe. It's that part of me that is pure and unadulterated, where my spirit's free, not tangled up with the physical side of life and worldly things. And that, I believe, is the thing that creates that spirituality. Because spirituality and worldly things, they don't mix. I prefer to hang on to my spirit in that sense, because I know that's going to lead me someplace where I want to go. Where if I cling to my material goods, like cars and houses and that won't lead me anywhere. In fact, it would tangle me up. It will mess my spirituality up. And that's why Aboriginal people are very spiritual. You know, like you go into a traditional situation, you know, it even amazes me, you know, the lack of materialism within my people. Like if you've got a car and they just jump in your car and take it for a spin, don't leave your clothes around because next minute your shirt will be going out the door. But everything's okay because we don't cling to material things. If you want it, take it. And that's another thing, just sort of bringing it in. When we talk about things, we don't talk about mine. It's ours, or we. And we have a sense of connection. You know, I alluded to that in my introduction, that, you know, to my family, community, universe, and that's a big part of our spirituality, and it's that connection. between each other, which is intangible.
Yes.
You know, that's what I'm saying. If I was to connect with you because you've got a nice car or a big home, you know, that makes our relationship no good. But if I connect to you as a person, and we do connect, that's all there is to it. We connect because we are connected.
Yes.
We vibrate in a sense together.
Behind every great athlete, there is a great support network. Australian Athletes with a Disability and Wheelchair Sports Australia help athletes realise their full potential.
Gonna go from 3, yes!
No matter their ability, we're there to support them. Sporting opportunities for all abilities. For more information, visit sports.org.au.
It's always been my dream to represent Australia in the Olympics. Epilepsy affects nearly 250,000 Australians. Like me, most people have their seizures controlled with medication. Even today, people with epilepsy face incredible discrimination, but this prejudice is just another obstacle we can overcome. We're just as capable as anyone else, and often we have to be stronger. I promise I'll do my best for Australia. Will you do your best for me?
Here are the current weather readings for Melbourne, Geelong and Shepparton on the MELfeed.video weather wall. It also includes tomorrow's forecast and expected minimum temperatures in these areas overnight. This is the MELfeed.video weather wall. We are currently looking for a sponsor. If you're interested, please email Michael at MELfeed.video for more details.
With that, there's an overlay which you have, which quite a few Aboriginal people do have, where they have this awareness of Aboriginal spirituality, but they are also Christians. How do those two things interplay? It's a big question.
That is. So that sort of leads me on to a really big area, because to do it well, I've got to tell you from the start. The start is I was baptised in the High Church of England when I was a small baby, so I'm an Anglican, and I was made to go to church by my parents. I had no choice, and this has happened because my parents wanted to fit in to the Australian society. Being Aboriginal in a white community, that was the way to go. So they thought, because everyone has a religion, it just happened to be the Church of England. Most other Aboriginals in the town I grew up in were Catholic and attended the Catholic school. I went to the state school and I learned very quickly colour didn't matter. I never felt part of the church. There was no other Aboriginal people going to this church. Everyone was white, I was Aboriginal. Of course, everyone's good to me. They made me feel at home and that. But it wasn't what I was used to. I learned to deal with racism and discrimination out in the community, in the schools. The church, in one sense, created an alien environment for me. It wasn't a real environment. Like, people wasn't nice to me out in the community, at school. And here was, everyone was nice to me. And I felt that this was a false life. So the church created this environment where it didn't gel, where my life at home and the Aboriginal community was very different. And that's where I was accepted for who I was, not for what I did or knew according to the Bible. No surprise, I left the church as soon as I could, when I got a few years up. And it was many years later that I knew I needed something, because something was missing in my life to support me spiritually. Also because Aboriginal people had a spirituality. That's why I needed to mix with people with the same spirituality. We believe in spirits, respect creation and all living things. Prayers help, and I got involved with the God-focused group. One group I got to know of 35 years ago, and which I'm still engaged with today. and that group was the Minority Armoured, who now, since had a name change, it's initiated a change. And those members that practice listen to God in the early part of the day, so I got to understand that this was, I don't know, this was my people. They were different people and they had different religions and all the rest of it, but still there was this genuineness about them.
Yes.
And I picked it up in the vibrations. So when these people speak to God in the early part of the day, it's understood that when God speaks, man obeys. And they operated by 4 standards of absolute love, unselfishness, purity and honesty. And these were the aims they followed. And after, it took me a couple of years to understand that. Like I thought, well, by applying, you have to apply yourself 100% and you would become a better person. I took these standards up and tried to live 100%, but fell short all the time, and I was wondering why. It took me a long time to understand that one only had to apply themselves 100% within their own capacity and not to be disappointed when a person couldn't have achieved 100%. Then, of course, not beat themselves up when they did fail to meet the mark.
Yes.
So that was a big understanding. This was about 2 or 3 years it took me to learn that simple little lesson. The group, the membership of the group is made up of all religions, faiths, and even having no faith in the world.
Right.
They accepted me for who I am and done lots of things to support me where I am today. There's no judgments or opinions. I feel that they are fair-income people, and I'm still associated with them today.
Yeah.
Some years ago, I got very sick at one point in my life, and while in hospital, I had this great dream in which I went into a cave to meet my elders to find the meaning of life. In my life, I've been sort of pursuing this idea. What is the meaning of life? What's it mean to me? The main elder in the group told me that what I wanted to know, and when I woke up in the middle of the night, I knew the secret of life. How happy was I? I was going to write it down, what the elder had told me, but decided not to, because how could I forget this important message? 10 seconds later, it went out of my head. I can't believe it even today, but the feeling of being elated and happiness stayed with me for a long time. But the next morning, the day sister came on duty and asked who's going to the hospital chapel for church, and she took my arm. And normally I'd sort of pull away like a horse, you know, but I don't know, I just was led to the chapel without any resistance from me. In the chapel there was a preacher and a young couple and 2 hospital patients, me and another, and the sister. Now this was church. Now to a boy who went to this high church of England and was used to, you know, congregations of a couple of hundred and, you know, all the ritual that the church followed, you know, like it was real to me, you know. So, but every word, every song and prayer made sense to me. For once in my life, you know, all the things in church just, it was hitting my heart like a gong, bang, bang, bang. And then I found myself asking the preachers to pray for me, and I wanted to give my life to Christ after the service. Even when the preacher was praying for me and leading me in this prayer, I was thinking, I was outside myself, thinking, what are you doing? You know, like, you know, like, you're not a Christian and all this sort of stuff. But nevertheless, I gave my heart to the Lord that morning and went back to the ward as happy as I have been in all my life, and sitting up in the bed thinking, now I made it. I made my commitment to God and I'm now a Christian by choice. Sort of, you know, I never had a choice last time, so this time it was my choice. I was happy for that. I didn't realise the significance of that, but being in control was something that I had little control over. My life, Everyone seemed to be making decisions for me. And circumstances and the way things were, you know, I just had to follow the path as it was laid out for me. But for the next 6 years I went to the Aboriginal church, which was the Aboriginal Evangelical Fellowship. So in a way it wasn't really a church. But we used to go to the Uniting Church building. We had a little deal going with them. And I was going to church, you know, twice a day, you know, like on Sunday, morning and afternoon, evening services. And I'd done that for 6 years, and then I was elected as the chairman of the church committee. And of course that's where I took my eyes off the Lord and started to worry about new tyres for the bus and petrol, and how much money was going into the church fellowship and tidings for the minister and all these material things.
Yes.
Remember I talked about when you get tied up with material things, it just clouds my spirituality.
That's right.
So what happened was I got caught up in that, and then all of a sudden my wife decided we should buy another house the other side of town. So we decided to move away from the area and too close to where we were both working at the time. It made sense to me, and we moved. And of course by moving, you know, we left the church and then...
Every minute.
Every hour.
Every mother and father.
Every sister and brother.
Every son and every daughter.
Everyone you see.
Everyone you cheer.
Everyone you watch.
And everyone you hear.
Everyone you meet.
Everyone you know.
Everyone you love.
Everyone is affected.
Reach out and get connected.
If a man's home is his castle, his shed is his kingdom. It's a place men can hang out with a few mates, build a few things, even if you haven't before, and give back to the community. No man should be without a shed. The Australian Men's Shed Association is working to provide a shed for all Australian men, and they have over 400 already. Visit your local shed, build your community, and make a difference. Find a shed near you. It's time to give back.
Show Me the Way creates the first social networking sites for Australia's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students. With secure online mentoring, Show Me the Way supports students to complete their schooling and continue to TAFE, university or vocational education. Show Me the Way connects students with e-mentors from corporate Australia. With secure online mentoring, Show Me the Way supports students to complete Year 12. To donate, visit showmetheway.org.au.
You're tracing a passage to this Christ awareness, but you've also had a constant involvement with Aboriginality, if you like. You've not abandoned that, and you've been there for your people wherever you've been able to do this. What's that interface between this Christ awareness and Christ commitment and your identification with Aboriginal spirituality? How has it changed the way, or has it made it grow? What's it look like in that light?
I don't know. It's sort of like, you know, like the environment created that spirituality for me. Like when I was going to church, the Aboriginal church, everything was good. And I was even getting up and leading the service.
Yes.
And, you know, I had aspirations at one point to go out and do some evangelising. Not so much telling people how bad they were, but telling people how bad I was. And I changed. So if I can do it, you can do it.
You can do it, yeah.
And that was my thought. Of course, I never ever got there. But just trying to find a difference between Christianity and spirituality was that even before I became, well, even during my time with the Aboriginal organisations I was working with 3 communities at the time. There was a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and every now and again I felt I had to go on my own somewhere. And I didn't know what I was doing. I just had to get out of that office, and then I'd go into the bush. See, like Dandenong had a lovely place called Police Paddocks.
Police Paddocks, yes.
So anyway, I used to go there, and I had a little special spot. I'd go there and I'd sit. And I wouldn't worry about the work, you know, like normally you sort of worry about stuff, but I didn't.
Yes.
I just sit. And I don't know, I just absorbed the energy in that area.
Yeah.
And I just sit, and I didn't even think. But within, say, half an hour, I'd be that energised. I'd come back to the flow, to the thing, and pick up the manna again. Like normally when you sort of want to, you go away from something that's giving you stress or hardship, you know, you're thinking about how can I get back and how can I do this and how can I, but it never ever occurred to me to even think about it. It was something that was in me.
Yes.
And I didn't realise until maybe last year I was invited to go and talk about meditation. And I thought, how can I go and talk about meditation? I don't meditate. Well, I didn't know how to talk about meditation, but I do meditate. Right now, this is after this. So then I started to think about it, and I just sat, you know, like I do, and it all came to me then. Aboriginal men used to always go away on their own.
Yes.
And I started to remember, you know, like one day Uncle will be there, next day Uncle's in the bush somewhere. And I said, where's Uncle? Oh, he just walk about, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
And I said, oh. So, see, I didn't know, but there's a part of me that knew.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Like, this is that spirituality, like, you know, being led by the Spirit. After, you know, like being energised and just by sitting in the bush area, later I was able to develop a spiritual healing walk in one of our parklands very close to the city, and it proved to be very successful by visiting a number of points that made up the walk. I put up the walk for all the common members to experience the walk. One day I'm going to get them all to go on this walk, because one of the things about common is that, you know, we're all, you know, we had, I think, this talk before, where we're all different, completely different. Like if you was going to pick people to come together, I think you wouldn't get a different crew.
No.
You know, we're so diverse, but yet there's this similarity with us. There's this spirituality, and that's why I feel very comfortable in common.
And you're the president of Common, aren't you?
Yes. And I don't know how that came about, but I'm very comfortable with common.
Yes.
During this United Nations Interfaith Harmony Week, this is a week we always go around, we plant a peace tree as opposed to a peace pole. The concept of peace has been adopted by many countries throughout the world by planting peace poles with messages of peace on them. The idea of planting peace tree came about when it was suggested to me that there were enough inanimate objects being stuck in the earth. It seems a lot better to plant life and watch it grow, and even better for the whole community to watch it grow together. Plus the planet would be a lot better off with more trees. Then again, there's a message of peace within our own community. Every year we should gather around our peace tree, evaluate our progress and reaffirm our commitment to peace and the processes towards peace through positive dialogue and action. And that's what I believe is needed today. We needed something that we can sort of gather around.
Yes.
And make our commitment to as a community together.
Yes.
Because individually we can go to our own churches, we can do our own things, but see, by doing that we split ourselves.
Yes.
By having a peace tree, it provides an opportunity for all the people to come together without any tags or, you know, and it becomes very spiritual. Whereby if we bring our own stuff along, like I'm an Anglican, you're this and you're that, You know, we create that difference ourselves. Well, if we go there with a pure purpose, that's why I think, you know, this question of spirituality comes into play. We can be very, very spiritual. It's what makes us who we are.
Yes.
That makes the difference. It's not what we think or do. It's how we do it, you know, like. And that, I think, creates our own spirituality.
Yes.
And once we, you know, like it's birds of a feather flock together. And, you know, like, why don't we build on things that unite us rather than sort of look at the things that divide us?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the way forward. And that's why, you know, I'm really involved with the communities here and elsewhere. Interfaith is a great forum whereby when we have an interfaith meeting, what comes across very strongly, how similar we are.
Well, that actually finishes the interview on a promotional note, because, as you know, the title of this series is Harmony and Diversity, and that's what you're actually addressing, is it the harmony arises out of the common ground, not out of the differences.
That's it.
Thanks,
Perfect.
Reg. Thank you very much, Uncle Reg.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
That's all for our program today. For more information, and if you want to see this episode again, visit our website, harmonyanddiversity.net. Goodbye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu
Here are the current weather readings for Melbourne, Geelong and Shepparton on the MELfeed.video weather wall. It also includes tomorrow's forecast and expected minimum temperatures in these areas overnight. This is the MELfeed.video weather wall. We are currently looking for a sponsor. If you're interested, please email Michael at MELfeed.video for more details.
I was diagnosed with Parkinson's at 27.
I was 46.
I was 62.
The first symptom I noticed
was loss of balance.
Was that I was always tired.
Was a loss of smell.
The most difficult thing for me is not to be able to travel in my retirement.
The most difficult thing for me was giving up a career that I loved.
The hardest thing for my mum was being pregnant with me.
We've all seen this one time or another. We may even have done it ourselves. But inhaling balloon gas is very dangerous and can be fatal. The helium in balloon gas acts as an asphyxiant, and when you inhale, it displaces the oxygen in your lungs. Balloon gas is safe in balloons and when you release it in a well-ventilated area and in a safe manner. So the next time you see some sucker about to inhale balloon gas, or you think it's going to be a laugh, stop and be gas-wise.
If you choose to drink then drive,
you could ruin lives.
Someone else's,
your family's,
or your own.
Choose not to instead.
The right choice could save someone's life.
Proud supporters of safety in our community.
GMCU and Southern Cross Austereo.
MELfeed.video.
This program is proudly sponsored by Overload Poetry Inc., producers of the Melbourne Overload Poetry Festival, and by Westward Poetry, the Western Suburbs' premier poetry reading.
And this is a zeal of zebras. The original op art, the original zipper, one entranced around her sister, Eohippus gone swing in London, outstanding, similar, kick, identikit, Winnie, unique, flick, fly, nicker, kick, under a shady boab tree, a zeal of grazing zebras lays. Come up and don't see me sometime. Hugh May West riding a zebra side saddle, resplendent in black and white couture, direct from the drift of Gondwana, her stallion stamps and stomps, switches, whiptails, squeals, bears, piano key, teeth, brays, a honky-tonk. He was her man, but she'd done him wrong. No one steals May's thunder, baby, or the zebras. No one else wears black and white. Zebras always have a come one step closer nature girl look, like kiss my poodle's donkey, like I may look sweet until you taste hoof. My upper Zambezi zebra, care of Victoria, falls and falls and falls and falls, and while I write this on the kitchen bench I am listening to 3RRR cast out a mighty congregation of flies. Wine drill, a weird great wall, silence wrenched. The DJ says, that was cracking viscera, as you do. Vultures feeding inside the rib cage of a zebra carcass, recorded by Chris Watson. In the place of our first upright steps, hail Africa. In the place we broke and drifted from. Synchronicity kills me. Stripes the universe in a grid of zigzag spikes, blasts of light across the flanks of the black unknown.
Cunha, Tasman Peninsula. The tide retreats, the beach exhales its crabs. Translucent, a stranded jellyfish holds its coloured centre like a fetus in a lab jar. We watch the floating gulls threaded on the horizon and imagine the safety of distance. Lying on your back next to me, your hip bones are the fins of two sharks circling closely. Your ribs the ridged edge of a stack of plates. How close we are to throwing up the white flag of our palms. You shift your driftwood legs and dream of suicide. We are too exhausted to deny the lone tern's cry.
This is a short one called Passage to Mykonos, or How I Farewelled You. On the ferry, and just in from Oz, I was jet-lagged and awed. As the hardwire scrawl of Piraeus receded, the city sounds, the coarse drone of buses drowned in the sea. The ferry's flags pummeled the ruthless wind. I didn't notice Helios's golden flight across the sky that day, only a faded moon behind the flags waning. I cast my heart then into the deep, a smooth marble chunk of me, silent, sunk. Ardent flags struck at the unbending wind, the ferry sailed.
Anger is my weakness, an iceberg, the inevitable tip, the dangerous finger pointing down, below, towards my mother and her cool, sharp hand, Mikimoto pearls dancing down the hallway after father snaps and slaps, the cold cocoon, embracing me in my bed as I go down and down and down again into the legacy of my anger. Awash with night and the swinging tails of killer whales, sirens wailing against the shore, matted with hubris and debris, the rebus of fanciful flight, Antarcticing, albatross, archetypes, ick, it sticks, it's lonely, but that's not the only thing, or even the worst, because the anger lives in my pocket, knife gouging cigarette burns into the memory of the childhood that I did not have, except in scenes burrowing through air, unfurling from the TV, landing on the lap of my open palm, offering supplication in return for thrusts of kindness after religious ed class. cobwebs in my hair, my nose, stitching up my eyelashes, holding me together. I love you. I love you. I write it on my impotent, omnipotent, magnificent failure, which even the bus driver thinks is perverse, but go down with me anyway to the tattered carny that is my fear, my love, my rage, my desire, my 7/8 bottomless iceberg. The legacy of white light imploding from my fist into the wall, the left side of my father's head. My epiphany, my epitaph, the last imprint of who I was before the crimes of the father became those of the son. And at heart, I feel an atomic attack coming on in the nucleus of my personality, which is melting now down the stairs, rushing into the streets in torrents, carrying me as far as I can run into the infinite titanic abyss. Thank you.
This is called Marguerite with her own thoughts down in the greenhouse. After a couple Valium, she works slowly. She looks from one warm ear of corn to another, bows close to the sunflowers' faces. They smile at her and spin clockwise forever. The corn whistles like popcorn popping. Dry stems break and turn to dust under her boots, powder. She looks up and through the glass she sees a starling outside. It whistles in the wet as it spatters through the alder's branches and the hoary grey and the blackberries, brambles and grass. At her feet sits this pile of beans she has to shell and the marigold she has to separate. The beans go easily and fill a jar. When she presses their pods between her fingers, the purple pinto beans shake to the floor. The river 50 paces away turns gold and spins ducks, then turns green again. The marigolds are different. Their yellow heads explode and spread orange up her fingers like a flame. Marguerite's greenhouse burns from the inside out.
Playing the 80s on Air FM 88.0.
Hi, this is Darren McElwain from Air FM Drive. Join me from 3 to 6 p.m. every afternoon on 88.0 in Penrith, and also you can catch me on tunein.com. That's from 3 to 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
Playing the 80s on Air FM 88.0.
Sport is for everyone.
No matter who you are or where you're from,
there's no place for discrimination in sport.
And everyone should feel welcome, safe,
respected and get a fair go.
Whether you're a player, a spectator, a coach or an official.
What do you want from your sport?
Are you ready to make a difference? Sport is for everyone.
And everyone starts with you.
Keep your sport inclusive,
safe, fair and fun.
For more information, go to playbytherules.net.au.
Australian women need to kiss more. Watch out for persistent and unusual symptoms, as they could be a sign of ovarian cancer. Know the important signs and symptoms. Kiss. Look out for symptoms like abdominal or back pain, difficulty eating or feeling full quickly, or persistent bloating, or a change in toilet habits. If you're experiencing persistent and unusual symptoms for more than 14 days, see a GP. Make sure you kiss regularly.
Nest of vipers. Like a hiss of poets, snaky at being overlooked, their unpaid brilliance rears, glittering scales of justice rattling, inflate, bare fangs, spit venom, angst, ennui, or a takeover bid of sub-editors sliding through the office every day off, just in case. Barefoot kids sprint for the slam of summer waves, shrieking, "Beware! Great whites and hammerheads this way, makos and bronze whalers and blues and tiger sharks, and stonefish, box, blue bottle, jelly, fish and stingrays. Don't forget Steve Irwin, stingrays. Killer whales, of course, Bees and wasps, fire ants, sting, sting, watch it, redback, white-tailed trapdoor funnel web, and crocodiles, oh yeah, that's a good one, and spitting cane toads, and gorgeous blue-ringed octopus. Feral pigs, rabid bats and rogue water buffalo bulls, deadly bloody cassowaries, yeah, magpie bints that peck your eyes out and swooping wedge-tails, yeah, sure. And tiger, red-bellied, black, taipan, copperhead, king brown, death-adder, dugite, and especially, my darling, nest of vipers. Beware, a bite like an elevator shaft dissolves the heart. Anticoagulant thump, thump, click, clack, your throat inflates. Pain like swallowed hot stones. Mother, mother, gone.
To finish, I'm going to read excerpts from the long suite of poems which gives the book its title, Bodies of Water. 1. You taught me we are bodies of water, shifting and joining, finding the same level. You taught me how we thirst. How to teach you desire is not abstract, it is here. To say, trust the decisiveness of your body, you are your own evidence. I've become a shell, giving off the same noise to every ear. My words are sand in my mouth. You showed me that some men are otters, moving sleekly through days, executing perfect circles of hypocrisy. A feminist in love with a man like you is always a traitor to something. 2. Your absence is insidious. Suddenly it's been a month, then 2. Days are the smugglers of time. How can I be as resolute as this, wearing this skin that remembers you? From crying, my eyes have become as ugly as fish, where once they were as beautiful as fish. I sleep on your side of the bed, preserving and erasing you. Waking at night, I am the faithful neck of the goose in flight. I am that sure sense in the darkness, seeking you. 3. Of all we have been, I would be an isthmus, the narrow strip stretching between 2 islands. An island connected to land by an isthmus is as cautious as a leaf in autumn, letting go, hanging on, letting go. Look at me turning golden, the generosity of skin. I am something about to happen. 4. We claim our bodies accidentally, like a stray cat that stays until one morning it belongs. My own body surprises me with its insistence, its presence, the perfect fit of flesh. Whatever you took, it is not this, not these surprising feet, this startled face in the mirror, these reliable lungs, not these hands conjuring words. Thank you.
It's called Notes on the Tip of My Tongue. Job and Kirillov around at my place talking about suffering. I'm not up for any shite concerning philosophical displacement of any kind, but they're mates, so what can you do? I offer them a couple of lines of the good stuff and start talking about life, the universe and recent shags. Kirillov, the big wankmeister general, starts talking about some checkout chick who won't return his sick fascination with anal intercourse. Apparently he's been seeing her for 2 weeks now and he wants some kind of treatise concerning anal sex. I tell him he's a sick twat. But Kirillov, in all his stupid Russian glory, tells me I'm an uptight arsehole who judges people's suffering without first consulting the lad's book of fair play. Fair play, I say. What the fuck is that? To which the Russian idiot replies, stop judging people's suffering by your own need to express yourself as an egalitarian twat in a society driven by a culture that has swapped spirituality for celebrity worship. Give me a fucking break, I reply. Just last week I gave some money to AIDS research, a charity I find dear to my promiscuous heart. Suffering is nothing but a chemical imbalance triggered off by a Freudian slip of the tongue. So we're having a couple of lines of sniff I got from my mate Loss, who half-anched 3 grams some rasa prick he's living with in Kemptown. And I say, hey, kill off, you big boring communist prick, listen to this. I've got a poem that sums up depression. He's pretty rude to me about my emotional well-being, so I recite the poem to him anyway. Only half here. There's something beautiful about depression. The way it makes you hide under the covers and half doze, while the morning light slides under the odd crease, forming strands of reality that eventually pull you out, shower you, dress you, and dump you on the pavement, blinking to the intensity of what may never occur. Killed off, like the Russian twat he is, and always has been. Hates the peace, telling me I know fuck all about suffering. I rack up a few more lines and promptly tell him to fuck off. At this point, Job tells me I'm being a bit harsh and sheds an irregular tear down his perfect face. I feel pity, which I thought had been cast from my arsenal of dwindling emotions, and I offer the Russian oath the first line. Kirilov laughs. I'm not impressed. Job then tells us he's being made redundant and wants to die. Nobody notices. I lean back in my chair. Kirilov starts touching himself. I get up, make to leave. Job tells us he's a believer. Kirilov threatens to kill me. I straighten my shirt and ask them if literature is a deformed work of art. Kirilov, to his credit, tells me that Freud is a waste of time and that there is no glory in the narcissistic mirage of depression. Job refuses to comment. The rest of the night is a blank. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lane Beachley. Australians have recycled enough printer cartridges to cover Bondi Beach 12 times. That's kept 11,000 tonnes of valuable resources out of landfill. Drop your used original cartridges into the special boxes at participating retail outlets, and they'll be turned into new products from pens to road surfaces. Help us keep up the good work. Find out more at cartridges.planetart.org.
Are you playing renovation roulette? I'm John Jarrett.
Now I know that deadly asbestos lies hidden in 1/3 of Aussie homes.
It can be found in any home built or renovated before 1987. Lurking in walls, under floor covering, behind tiles, in roofing. Asbestos. It was used everywhere.
So if you're a renovator or a tradie, you could be risking your life and the lives of others.
Remember, go slow. Asbestos, it's a no-go. Visit asbestosawareness.com.au to learn what you need to know.
This bank is helping to save lives. Every year, 500,000 Victorians have no idea where their next meal is coming from. Food Bank Victoria works with farmers, supermarkets and manufacturers to make sure their surplus stock ends up here, to be distributed to those in need. But all of this is not enough. Right now, this bank needs interest, your interest, to support Victorians in need. If you can help, visit foodbankvictoria.org.au.
My name's Alex Warman, and I'm in one of the 2 creative writing classes at Brain Mission's Second Story program. Both are taught by our teacher Lee Kaufman, who is here and who will finish off our performance today. This was written for a gig we did a month or 2 back, put on by the Port Phillip Council on Poverty Day, and Lee had asked us to see if we could write something on the theme of poverty. And I've nearly found it. There it is. Okay, Ackland Street Cake. I walk along Ackland Street. It's my morning coffee beat. Here comes a shuffling alky dag, mutters, "Hey mate, got a fag?" Conning him up and down. Don't use them. He coughs and splutters, mutters, "Mmm." Wobbling his bulbous nose, "Got $1?" I scratch my tightening collar. No, but I'll buy you a pie. OK, guess I'll keep Johnny dry. While sipping slowly at my long black, hearing cups and saucers go click-clack, Johnny is back, munching his pie. A chubby gait, he just wanders by. From a nearby table, face of a snake, furtively whispers, "Let him eat cake."
Putting a pretty face on death. Enticement, mentality, tight face up to snuff, snuff it.
My first poem's called Sardines. I turn sharply on the sardine oil, oiling the floor, butts peppering this holy carpet, but I am not looking at the others. They shuffle, heads down, up the woven stairs, to the pantry, and again to the pantry, one more time, to see the holy spaces where the sardines should be.
This is Love Poem in a War Zone. It's set in Central America in the 1970s and 80s. I've never been there, so I just imagined it. Here it goes. In a sad, a tender moment, we share a cloud in a night of caresses, in an adobe hut not far from town. Aye, that we could spend 1,001 nights together, but there is a war on, and we only have these few brief hours to play the music of the flesh. When we two do rise from our sport, let's leave in our bed the passion that shines in our eyes. For outside this pile of mud, the very bricks have eyes and tongues, ears and mouths. Our last farewell shall be merely a glance, and with this last loving look, we'll to the field of blood return.
Break. The clouds have broken, sweet relief in rain. Thunder strikes intermittently, bucket loads of water. Consistent tinkering on patio, pelting on the roof. Dripping and gushing freely from eaves in immodest, noisy showers. Gliding relentlessly down windows like desperately rushing waterfalls. Coolness transforms the air. Your soul breaks, shattering silently.
As I leave the forest well-worn path and head into its deep dark heart, where the woods meet the sleeping river and all life returns to one source, I weave and cast my mighty spells as I wait for the moment of surprise, where the story first begins with the magic words, "Once upon a time."
I am a married woman, a prisoner of marriage, bound by sharp shackles, skin cut open. I am a sphinx, splashing spittle, drinking sludge. I am a winged monster, woman's head, lion's body, can shoot out a cry, can wear a Mona Lisa smile. I am a married woman, but I'll find a new marriage contract to sing and dance, have a Nagila. I am a married woman.
Summer, a season that sizzles slowly onwards, where sunshine blazes on hot sand. Perspiration drips from every pore, and sweating bodies seek cooling water to restore. Summer summons people outdoors to venture out from behind their four walls. Summer lingers, summer lingers. Ice cream drips from sticky fingers. It's the season that Aussies embrace, retreating hastily from the rat race. Despite the flies, mosquitoes and ants, it's the time of year to don short pants. Summer lingers, summer lingers. By crikey, it's time to end this poem before someone whinges.
I'm very honoured to perform today by the side of my students, so it's very special for me.
I'm going to read 3 poems. One of them called This Is What I Remember as Love. And it's a kind of just my reminiscence about my teenage years, but unfortunately were a very long time ago. But I think the love when we're teenagers are a bit sharper. This is what I remember as love. Our love I remember when it was still love and could fill our days with amber. Our love I remember as a jumping mattress spread diagonally across an emaciated room with a too high ceiling and hungry acoustics. I remember it smelled of the Woodstock we had never witnessed, melting wax, rolled cigarettes, cheap wine, and only the flowers in that room were as fresh as strawberries and sex. Sprawled, we watched something, but I don't remember television or radio, computers. The room was empty of wires, as though we came from a different era. Only a big brown cassette player we found in the garbage. Yet we managed to watch how they drank themselves and sang themselves and broke into the smoky sounds of Hendrix and Joplin. You said, I'm going to die very young, just like Jim. I still remember how we had everything in that naked, crooked room that closed in on us tight and dusty, swarming with ants, moths, and the future. We had no need to walk away, get fresh air, sleep outside, and this is what I remember as love.
This program was proudly supported by our sponsors.
So, you think you're ready for this?
To take on the world? Why not?
Now it's time for a quick reminder of programs coming up tonight on MELfeed.video, so please stay with us.
evening and welcome to Transit. I'm Tammy Odontiadis. My guest for tonight is Mr. Ed Bright, who's the long-serving secretary of the Melbourne Transit Band and one of the band members, of course, and he plays the trombone. Is that correct, Ed?
That's correct, Tammy, yes. Thanks for having me along.
Welcome to the program. Now, tell us a little bit about the band. How did it get formed, or when did it get formed, and how did it come about?
Oh, the band was formed 1938-39 within the ranks of the Melbourne Metropolitan Tramways Board, as it was then, by tramway employees. I think it was under the auspices of the Tramway Athletics Society, really. It started off as a subsection of that and then broke away on its own. I think they took about 12 months to form the band, just chasing players up from around the varying tramway depots. And I think they had their first rehearsal in February 1939, and that makes the band nearly 60 years old.
That's a long track record, isn't it?
Yes, I don't remember back then, but up until recently we've only just lost our last foundation member who died back in December, but we do have other members who go back quite a way, back 1950, I think.
Is that a reasonable track record for a brass band of this nature?
Oh, I believe there'd be very few bands that have the retention of players that we do. Yes, you always have players come and go, but we've got a central core that have been in the band, have never played anywhere else but in this band, so we're pretty proud of that.
How long have you been serving in the band?
24 years, just on 24 years since I joined the band, back in 1974.
And what's the makeup of the band today? Is it they're not all tram drivers?
No, that's certainly a popular fallacy. Back when the band was formed, the bulk of the players were tramway employees. That was the core of it, although I don't believe it ever had a full band of tramway employees. They just didn't have the right mix of players, and they had helpers from another band, particularly the Hawthorn band, because the first musical director was also the MD of the Hawthorn band, and so he'd bring players in to help out. But over the years, I think there's less and less, brass playing players in the tramways. If you like, it's been a bit of a change in the mix there. And we're down to the stage now. We've got a couple of serving employees. We've maybe got half a dozen retired employees, but the rest of us work, come from all walks of life or areas of employment. We've got patent attorney, barrister, managing director. We've got a couple of people who own their own companies, teachers, students, administrative people. Quite a range.
It's nice to see people getting behind it, though. Can you tell me a bit about the type of music?
Well, the band, over the years, like most bands, we've had quite an input into the contesting field. I think generally brass bands, amateur brass bands, community brass band, all the same thing, are very keen on competing. They see that as a way to improve their playing at all times. So we've done a fair bit of that over the years.
As I can see back here, it's very impressive.
Yes, that's most of the recent trophies. A lot of the older ones, we don't know where they went. I think they went into the old Tramways board and were on display there, and we never saw them again. But most of those are fairly recent. But the band isn't competing these days. We had to make a decision a few years ago on where our priorities lay, and really getting out and entertaining the public we think is more important than contesting. We'd like to do both, but we have a very large commitment to our Wattle Park recitals.
Are they your main concerts that you do at Wattle Park?
Well, they're the most regular things, so over the years they're the main things. It mightn't be the main thing in any given year, but the band does 8 monthly concerts a year at Wattle Park, and we just started our 59th annual recital season only a week ago.
It's something that I think even the newer generation, the younger generation, would like to just show to their children, something of the past. And it's still, I think it's something that I'd really like to pass on to my children, about having an enjoyable Sunday afternoon in the park with the music and just relaxing. And it's a different type of music, so they can appreciate a wide variety, not just what's going on the radio, so to speak.
That's right. Yeah. Actually, with our recitals out there, we set a monthly theme, if you like, which doesn't tie us down completely, but we do like to give a feeling to people as to what's coming up for the next month, so they say, oh, I don't want to miss that.
Right.
But you can't make it so strict that people say, well, I don't like that, so I won't come. There's always a bit for everybody, but our next concert is called Continental Confection, so we'll have a lot of European music in that. The concert after that is called The Colour of Swing. And then come to December, you're talking about a Christmas feel and a bit of an Australia Day feel in January, and so it goes on. We try and make it a bit interesting.
Something about the stage band. Is that a separate band altogether?
Oh, not a separate band altogether. It's under the umbrella of the Melbourne Tramways Band organisation. We call the Stage Band Transition. It's really kicked off as a proper stage band about 12 months ago. A few years back, the band's always loved playing big band music as a brass band, but it's very hard to get arrangements. And we thought the one way out of getting arrangements was to get stage band arrangements in and play them, but then you've got euphoniums, tenor horns playing saxophone parts, and they're very limited. So we went the step beyond that and brought in saxophone players and a full rhythm section. So our stage band is just like a typical big band of the 40s with a full Glenn Miller layout, if you like, and we like to specialise in that music of the 40s. The stage band, the aim is to be as professional as we can and try and get regular engagements, perhaps in RSLs or other places like that, that would love to have a big band there, but can't really afford to get a fully professional outfit in. So we see a big future there, and we're working very hard to just to get the full repertoire up, and that's a great buzz for us.
You saw me standing alone, without a dream in my heart, without a love of my own.
You mentioned to me that the band had gone overseas earlier this year. How did that go?
Oh, that was terrific, Tammy. Yes, the band went over to Thailand. We went as part of an Australian pilgrimage of returned servicemen who'd been to Thailand or working on the Thai-Burma Railway during the Second World War. They had generations ago. They had the original diggers themselves and their families, and those younger members who their grandfathers or whoever mightn't be alive now, but there was a very large group of people went over there. We went over as part of that tour, raised our own money to get there. The focus of it really was to be available and there to play for the opening of the new museum at Hellfire Pass, which was opened by the Prime Minister on the 24th of April, just the day before Anzac Day. And by being there at the right time, we were invited to play for the opening of the museum, which was really something. We performed there in about 45 degrees in the shade. It was very, very hot, and but the 1,500 Australians there, they all applauded wildly to see us there. So we opened that up on Anzac Eve. On Anzac Day morning, we had a small group from our band, and 10 play at the dawn service on Anzac Day at Hellfire Pass, which was very, very moving for all of us there. The Prime Minister was there and did the reading for that. Later that morning we played at the large service at Kanchanaburi, where all the Australians who died up there are all interred. That was the administrative headquarters for the Japanese on the edge of the railway there. We did a lunchtime concert that same day for the diggers, so it was a very hectic period. But prior to that, we had we'd done concerts for the diggers that were over there using both the brass band and the stage band.
So you really got your money's worth on that trip?
Oh, it was very, very solid, particularly over the last few days. We were there for just over 2 weeks, and none of us will ever forget, particularly that moment at Hellfire Pass.
Well, thank you very much, Ed, for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Tammy. Thanks for having me along.
And I hope that and believe that the band will continue in the future.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. It's our job and on the current committee to see that in 60 years' time there's still a band here again.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone, for being with us. Good night.
So, you think you're ready for this?
To take on the world? Why not?
MELfeed.video. MELFeed.video.
Welcome to the CEC Report. It's the 27th of April. I'm Robert Barwick and I'm joined today by CEC leader Craig Isherwood. Welcome, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie.
In this week's CEC Report, Royal Commission proves Australia's banks are heading for a crash, and any cyber attack will be British, not Russian. Craig, before we begin, just put in a plug for the Australian Alert Service. Regular viewers of the show know that sometimes by the end we're rushing things a bit, and because we have to talk to a time limit. It's a pretty strict one because this show goes on television. So just to remind people, what we discuss on the CEC report is elaborated in our weekly magazine, the Australian Alert Service. So anything we discuss, call in, that you want to know more information about, call in on our toll-free number and get yourself a free copy of this, right? It's very important and you can get it regularly if you so choose. So that said, let's talk about what's happening this week. Royal Commission proves Australia's banks heading for a crash. And this is getting more and more dramatic, Craig. What's happening? We'll play some videos.
I think they've completely underestimated, again, Robbie, what happens when a Royal Commission takes place and gets handled by the people. Because, I mean, the Royal Commissioner, Mr Hames, and the number of the prosecuting...
Rowena Orr, Shock and Orr,
as they said. I mean, they're doing a fantastic job of, you could say, getting between the cracks of the terms of reference.
That's right.
Because the terms of reference with the Royal Commission are designed to try and constrain things because there's enormous political damage that can be done. And this is what's happened. You know, Turnbull had to come out and defend himself this week, saying, why didn't we have a Royal Commission earlier? And he said, oh, well, this and this. And he was showing up for what he is, a protector of the banks.
And the viewers by now will have recognised this has really blown up in their face. And Craig, it's one of the reasons what we cover in the lead article in this week's alert, because as we know, our policy to address all this is Glass-Steagall, and we can talk about that in a bit later as well. But Glass-Steagall was introduced in the United States in the Glass-Steagall Act in 1933 after an inquiry into the banks exposed them as criminal enterprises.
The Pecora Commission,
And this is shaping up in Australia likewise. Unlike in, say, the United States and the United Kingdom since the crash, where there was no inquiry into the banks, and Glass-Steagall nearly got up, but the banks were able to wiggle out of it because they still had influence over politicians. The power of the banks is being shattered in front of our eyes. And people, ordinary people, one of the things we keep trying to have to lift people up to understand, Craig, is we are many, they are few, but ordinary people tend to think, the system is so all-powerful. Don't think that. Nothing is all-powerful. Yes, it's powerful, but nothing is all-powerful, and we are watching an extraordinary stripping away of the power of banks in Australia, but it'll only happen if we take advantage of that. Right? So anyway, let's look at the latest in terms of some predicates, and we can discuss the campaign. Yesterday, so we're recording this on Friday the 27th of April, so on the 26th of April, the bank stocks crashed, and they crashed because of what was coming out of the Royal Commission, but APRA, the regulator, immediately rode to the rescue, and it actually showed up why we're saying APRA must be investigated. So what happened was UBS, the big international Swiss investment bank, they have their branch in Australia has an analytical unit headed up by this guy Jonathan Mott, and they have done some very good work on analysing the mortgage bubble in Australia. And so this is the unit that came out with a warning recently about the $500 billion in liar loans, right? So this guy does a lot. This Jonathan Mott and his team do a lot of analysis of the mortgage bubble.
So, Robbie, this is the $500 billion of loans because basically the paperwork was fraudulent. And basically this is why they're called liar loans.
That's right. These were loans issued on mortgages that the people really shouldn't have qualified for, right? And it's a big problem in our system. Westpac had to hand over to the Royal Commission documentation relating to 420 of its loans, and Jonathan Mott's crew was able to look at that data and come to the conclusion, oh my God, it's worse than we thought. The indebtedness of these customers was worse than they had expected, right? On the basis of that, he put out a statement calling into question 70% of Westpac's loans, mortgage loans, 70%. And he advised to sell on Westpac shares, which is why Westpac then tanked in the market. Now, Westpac rubbished this analysis, Craig, and said, no, that's all rubbish. Look, the proof that it's rubbish is we get so few defaults. Well, the first answer to that is we're at record low interest rates, and they're finding ways to take the pressure off their customers all the time because they're afraid of defaults, not because they want to be nice to their customers. That's one thing. Two, though, the main reason we have record low defaults in Australia compared to other countries is we have full recourse loans, which means if you are indebted to the bank and you can't pay, you owe the bank for the rest of your life, right? Unlike the United States, etc. I want to play a video.
Can't just post the keys back to the bank.
That's right. Bob Katter, the Member for Parliament who's going to introduce the Glass-Steagall bill, he's been highlighting this like we have for a long time. I just want to play you a quick video of him in Parliament last year when he introduced the private members bill for the Royal Commission. He highlighted this factor of Australia's banking system. Have a look.
Mr Acting Speaker, the Australian newspaper, the Sunday edition, no less, the week before last, had the entire front page taken up with what, quite frankly, is the imminent collapse of banking in Australia, Mr Acting Speaker. Nearly a third of Australia's population lives in good old NSW, Newcastle, Sydney and Wollongong. Nearly a third of the Australian population. In Sydney, the average price of a house is over $900,000 and the average for the area is well over $750,000. That means the repayments are in the order of $35,000 and the interest is in the order of $30,000 and the annual charges are in the relevancy of about $5,000. So that's $70,000 they've got to find if they want to buy a house. Well, the average income, the average weekly income is $72,000, $50,000 after tax. So even if the husband and wife is working, their situation is perilous. Perilous, Mr Acting Speaker. And what are the banks going to do? Now, they got through the GFC, not because of the prudential responsibility. I mean, lending people $900,000 for a house is hardly prudentially responsible. It was non-recourse lending. That was the issue. They have recourse lending here in Australia. They've been able to control this parliament up to date, because of this unable to deliver. What it means, Mr Acting Speaker, is that if you can't make the repayments in the United States and most of the rest of the world, the bank can take the house. Invariably, they'll lose money, some money, and of course the person himself loses the house. So they share the responsibility of having made a bad contract. In Australia, there's no sharing of responsibility. The bank gets the house and gets you as a debt slave for the rest of your life. You carry that debt for the rest of your days, and you will have no hope of carrying it out. If you couldn't keep the repayments up on the house, you will have no way you're going to be able to repay a debt of $100,000 or $200,000 that is outstanding. And when the bank finishes you off, they put a whole lot of extra hits in, Mr Acting Speaker.
So, Craig, as you can see there, Bob Katter actually has a very good handle on the essence of the banking system in Australia and the property bubble, right?
Yep.
And this part of it is a big part of it, and it's why it's the only thing that has stood between the banks and a full-blown crash even in 2008, but it can't last forever. The burden that's piling up on Australians is getting too much. I want to make this point, though. A few weeks ago, we interviewed on this show Denise Brayley of the Banking and Finance Consumers Support Association. She's the president and founder of it. She said on our show that in her estimation, 80% of bank loans are subprime or dodgy, right? So for Jonathan Mott's UBS, with all its resources, they have finally caught up to something that Denise Brayley uniquely, whose only resources is the tireless work she's done on behalf of thousands of bank victims, right? She figured this out a long time ago. And go back and watch that interview if you want to see it. Essentially, here's the bottom line here. The Royal Commission is proving that the way the banks have been making their huge profits, it's the profits they've been making that have made the whole country and the whole world think they're the strongest banks in the world. But the way they've been making those profits is a rotten system, right? It's based on fraud, it's based on criminality, etc. And it's a house of cards that's going to come crashing down, and we have to be able to address that. Let's take a quick break and continue this afterwards.
Here is some brilliant news for adults who have difficulties with spelling, reading a newspaper or phone bill, or writing letters and emails. It can be easier to improve your reading and writing skills than to keep putting it off. Take the plunge. Call the Reading Writing Hotline, 1300 655 06.
1300 655 06.
It could change your life.
If you choose to text while driving,
You could ruin lives.
someone else's, your family's, or your own,
Choose not to instead.
the right choice could save someone's life.
Proud supporters of safety in our community.
GMCU and Southern Cross Austereo.
Juggling work and caring for mum can be overwhelming. Having an understanding employer and access to support helps. I love my mum. I just wish I had some time to myself.
Had enough of the bad news about carbon dioxide and climate change? Wood is one solution. Trees take CO2 from the air and store it in their wood. They're also renewable, unlike concrete and steel. But the wood you choose should be recycled or from certified plantations or forests. This helps protect areas of high conservation value. So next time you're building or buying something, make it wood and do your world some good.
If you were living on the streets, wouldn't you want more than just your best friend to keep you safe, warm and dry? Donate to Backpack Bed for Homeless and give warm, waterproof protection and dignity tonight. Call 1300 OzHelp.
Welcome back to the CEC Report, where we're discussing Royal Commission proves Australia's banks heading for a crash. Now, Craig, we just talked about how UBS put out this analysis about Westpac and the bank's stocks crashed yesterday. Well, on cue, and I suspect, I was trying to confirm it, but I'm pretty sure UBS's analysis would have come out first. APRA, the bank regulator, made a stunning announcement yesterday. They said that there's a restriction or a cap that they'd put on bank lending to investors of 10%. The cap was the growth in that lending to investors couldn't be more than 10% a year. They said suddenly, we're lifting that cap now, it's served its purpose.
Yeah, you shrunk all the investment.
Exactly.
Investment loans, yeah.
Well, that's their claim. But of course, if you're a property buyer in Australia, what you know is that, you're like a home buyer, you want to buy it for a home, everybody knows what they've been up against for too long is this horde of investors, right, that have been highly leveraged. They're the bulk of the dodgy loans, the dodgy liar loans, right? And they're the ones that have been driving up the property prices. This is a naked attempt by APRA to get the property prices that are starting to cool down in Sydney and that back up again, right? And APRA has done this every time. APRA started the property bubble by incentivising the banks with its macro-prudential policies, and it has, every time it started to wobble, APRA has come in with some little lever twist like this to inflate more air into it then, right? And this proves why we've been saying the Royal Commission must look at APRA and its macro-prudential policies. But we'll put a tweet up on the board here, on the screen. On the 13th of April, the Bank for International Settlements sent out a tweet which explained, actually, they didn't make the connection, but I did, why, when Malcolm Turnbull set up these terms of reference that you talked about, APRA's macro-prudential policies were excluded. The Royal Commission's not allowed to touch them. And the tweet said, the global financial crisis and its spillovers led to greater use of macro-prudential policies and capital flow management. But to ensure global financial stability, those policies need international coordination. And that's the key. This is the international banking dictatorship that we talk about. APRA is a subsidiary, a de facto subsidiary of the Bank for International Settlements, right? And its job is to make sure Australia's banks are stable so that if the property bubble cannot blow up here, blow up our banks and trigger potentially a global banking crisis?
Yeah, Robbie, what people don't realise is that APRA is charged with two things. First of all, to protect the financial stability of the system, aka protect the banks.
Yep.
It's also charged with protecting people's deposits.
Protecting depositors.
Depositors, yes. But the problem with that is, as we've seen with our recent campaign against APRA to exclude deposits from depositors from any sort of bail-in, the government railroaded the legislation through.
Yep.
So those amendments to exclude deposits were never allowed to get up. So APRA now has got enormous power to, in effect, de facto bail-in. Now, the government wasn't going to give APRA direct power to bail in deposits, but because it has not excluded deposits from the legislation, it's been pushed through, APRA now has that power. And look, when you get into a global financial crisis, which is coming, Mark 2, then APRA will grab whatever tools it can in the name of financial stability, and things like grabbing people's deposits, right, will be seen in the context of financial stability and not in the interest of depositors.
And if they think APRA has any care about ordinary Australians, know this: APRA has watched the banks commit these crimes. It's their supervisor.
Yes.
But it didn't mind because those crimes contributed to the bank's profitability, which contributed to their stability.
Yep.
Right? That's the issue here. Now, Craig, a couple of things quickly. We're going to show a video. We went to the Royal Commission this week. We're out there every day. I interviewed Dr. Peter Branson of Bank Reform Now, and we'll just play that interview, and then we'll talk about it. Hi, it's Robert Barwick reporting for the CEC Report from outside the Banking Royal Commission hearings in Melbourne at the law courts here. Sorry about the noise. I'm joined by Dr. Peter Branson of Bank Reform Now. Hello, Peter.
G'day, Robbie. How you going?
Good. Thanks for coming.
That's all right.
Are you enjoying foggy Melbourne?
It's not as foggy as I was worried about. It's pretty good. Actually, the weather's been very good.
It is excellent, isn't it? It's beautiful. What we've seen in the last week of hearings of the Royal Commission has been absolutely explosive, as all the viewers will recognise. Last week the issue became breaking up the banks. Everybody recognised that. We have to break up the banks. Now, as you know, the CEC has put up a bill to do it, which Bob Catter, the member for Kennedy, has agreed to introduce. For some reason, all the media is reporting on the Royal Commission, but they haven't touched that question of that there's an actual Glass-Steagall bill to break up the banks, that it's going to be introduced in Parliament. So we're going to have to get their attention and make sure they start reporting that. But I wanted to talk to Peter because there's some other things in the media coverage of this Royal Commission that, to be frank, is pathetic. And one of the things I've heard in the last few days is, boy, we had no idea that these were the kinds of things banks were up to. Now, Peter, you've founded a bank reform movement called Bank Reform Now. Just tell the viewers how long your case against the banks have been going.
Right. Look, the thing is this, it's not about me, but I'll briefly mention what my story was. 2004, NAB gave an unconscionable loan to a member of my family, no hope of repaying it, and obviously the consequences flowed on from there. It was a nightmare. But 2004...
So that's 14 years ago.
14 years. Now, I tried to sort it out with NAB. They didn't play ball. I told NAB in 2013 that I'm going to mount a campaign. I've mounted a campaign, Bank Reform Now. It's all coming to a head now with the Royal Commission, and the timing is perfect. And finally, people are starting to see what's going on. And don't let Turnbull or any of his ministers fool you. They've known all along what's been going on. We told them multiple times. They've got email baskets full of emails from victims. It's a charade what they're doing.
And you've got, with your group, Bank Reform Now, you've got hundreds and hundreds of people involved in it.
We've got thousands of people on it. We've got over 12,000 on our Facebook page.
Yeah.
And it's growing all the time.
And that's been going 5 years.
That's been going, yes, it's 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years.
So this claim that the media is saying, oh, no one knew this was going to be the case, it's obviously a farce. Now, you've expressed to me your lack of confidence in the government actually doing something about this, and so you've launched an initiative yourself with your organisation today, or yesterday, I believe.
That's right.
Just explain what that is.
We launched the Big Bank Bang. It's a boycott of CBA. The idea is that we target one bank at a time. If people take mass action in this way, it'll hurt the bank where the only way that counts. They're only worried about their brand, and they're only worried about their bottom line. And the thing is this, the Royal Commission has given us a great opportunity, but it's only scratched the surface. what's more horrifying is what hasn't been revealed yet.
Yeah.
There's much more. And the thing is, the Royal Commission's terms are limited, the duration was limited. Turnbull wanted it limited, and he wanted it with hands tied behind its back. We're not going to cop it, so we don't want Turnbull to fix it. We don't want the politicians to fix it. We don't want the Royal Commission. The people have to take responsibility, and they can take responsibility by joining in campaigns like this.
Now, as you know, Peter, the CEC is the champions in Australia of the idea of a Glass-Steagall separation of banks, where the vertical integration of banks is broken up. You understand how that kind of structure can protect bank customers going forward?
Exactly right. It's a great idea. It's long overdue. It was a travesty that it was repealed by Bill Clinton under suspicious circumstances, very suspicious circumstances. But the thing is, that's just another example. You can't trust the politicians to bring the banks into line. It's got to be a people-powered movement. CEC's doing a great job, BRN's doing a great job, and we like the support. Both of us would like the support of more people.
Well, that's absolutely true. The only time politicians are honest, in our experience, is when they're afraid of their constituents.
The politicians right now are being embarrassed into action. That's the only reason they're taking this action, is because it's become so public and the revelations are so horrific, and there's much more to come.
All right, well, Peter, thanks very much for joining us today. Welcome again to Melbourne, like I said. Enjoy the rest of your day. And that's it from the Banking Royal Commission hearings in Melbourne for the CEC report.
Now, Robbie, we can't give up on organising and getting Glass-Steagall passed in the Parliament. We've launched a petition called Pass Australian Glass-Steagall Bill to break up the banks, which people can search on change.org. People need to get involved, because the issue is changing the laws to be able to protect ourselves.
Not just consumer sort of boycotts, etc. Although I understand people being desperate for that. Every time people sign that petition online, by the way, Craig, an email goes to members of Parliament. So make sure you do that.
Very important.
All right, we'll take another break.
Hi, I'm Darren McElwain from Air FM Drive. You can tune into my show from 3 to 6 p.m. on 88.0 in Penrith and also on tunein.com. And apparently, we don't throw rocks. Air FM Drive.
Every time we buy certified organic, we're making a choice to help our environment and build a healthier community. But it can be hard to know that what we're buying is truly organic. The Australian Certified Organic logo is only given to products after a very rigorous process. So when you see this logo, it means you can trust that there are no genetically modified foods, no animal cruelty, and no harsh synthetic pesticides used. A healthier community is always better for our future. So the next time you shop, look for this logo.
I want to get the word out to blokes about a little gland called the prostate. It's only the size of a walnut, but it can cause a whole lot of grief. Prostate cancer deaths pretty much equal breast cancer deaths. The problem is, if you wait too long, it may be too late. It took one of my mates. Don't make me angry. Talk to your doctor about your prostate, and if necessary, get it checked. You'd be nuts to leave it to chance.
Welcome back to the CEC report. Finally, any cyber attack will be British, not Russian. And Craig, last week, Malcolm Turnbull goes over to London for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, CHOGM, and we might be able to find the footage, but you can see Theresa May, the Prime Minister of Australia, the Prime Minister of New Zealand and the Prime Minister of Canada, all four in a row, and they are four of the what's called the Five Eyes, with the other partner being America. And this is an intelligence sharing operation where, by virtue of that, suddenly Malcolm Turnbull had this inside information that Russia is behind every computer glitch you've ever had. Right? They're active cyber warfare.
That's when it's not China.
That's when it's not. That's right. That's when it's not China. Like China was to blame for the census debacle last year, which of course it wasn't. And when they announced it wasn't, it was a very quiet announcement. But anyway, now it's Russia, 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 Russia. This stuff is coming from GCHQ, Government Communication Headquarters. It's Britain's most secretive intelligence agency. We can't deal with it all in the time we've got, but this week in our alert service, we exposed the whole agenda here in a 2-page article. British intelligence is preparing a cyber attack on the UK to be blamed on Russia. And essentially what you've got is this: British intelligence has no credibility whatsoever, right? This has been their history. They've long orchestrated events, including terrorist attacks, for a political agenda, right? Yep. Whether that be extra powers for the government in the name of anti-terrorism or triggering a war or whatever. In this case, the British have a particular agenda where cyber attacks can be a very useful way to escalate against Russia. Britain has been pushing for a number of years for NATO's charter to be changed so that cyber attacks, Craig, can be included in the list of things that can trigger the invocation of Article 5. Now, Article 5 of NATO's charter says that if one NATO member is attacked, they're all attacked and they all join them for war to respond. It's a military thing, right? It means NATO goes to war. They want to use cyber attacks to trigger that. Now, the thing with cyber attacks is they can be easily faked. And the public, unlike what's happening in Syria at the moment, for instance, where chemical weapons inspectors have gone in there and they've all informally admitted, they haven't put out a formal statement yet, but they have found nothing, right? And so eventually those kind of claims can be disproven. This is much harder. You've got to be a technical computer expert, etc. So this is very, very dangerous, and it's potentially the most dangerous escalation of war. And the issue is, Craig, with what's happening in Syria and all the claims Britain keeps making keep falling apart. How seriously should we take their intention to do something like this?
Well, Robbie, the global financial crisis is the hub of this issue, right? And they know that the City of London, Wall Street, they're sitting on the biggest debt bubble, speculative bubble in history, never been dealt with. So what's got to happen is you've got to get more controls to control ordinary people. Yeah. Because that way you can make sure that
if you're the regime and the system falls apart, you need
bring in martial law and sorts of fascist police controls. And we've talked about this in many of our publications over the years, that the government uses this type of lawmaking, this type of intelligence operations to control ordinary people, first and foremost. And the other thing with Russia, you have to bear in mind that Donald Trump, when he came in, had the intention of wanting to collaborate with Russia. So you had two superpowers that, for goodness sake, could end up collaborating for peace. Yeah. That's the last thing the British have wanted. They've started many wars around the place on false information. Yep. And that sort of isolates Donald Trump's intention, which is very dangerous.
Yep. All right, so thanks, Craig, again. We've run out of time for this week's CEC Report. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, call in and get a copy of the alert service. Tune in next week for more.
Okay, Sarah, I'm going to order some pathology tests to see how everything's going.
Half the Australian population had a pathology test last year. That's you or someone you love. 100 tests are performed every minute, delivering vital medical information. From the moment you are born, your healthcare depends on pathology tests. 70% of medical decisions rely on information from pathology tests. Pathology is the engine room of healthcare. One small sample can reveal millions of insights all about you. Pathologists are your doctor's doctor. 25,000 people work to provide doctors with the answers they need to treat you. Australian pathology is world class. We may never meet you, but we see each of you as part of our family. Every minute, 23 Australians find out more about their health.
Good news, Sarah. The results show that everything's okay.
Pathology provides peace of mind.
I rely on Australian pathology.
Sign up online to support Australian pathology.
I didn't think this could happen in Toowoomba. And then I saw it on TV that night. It really opened my eyes.
Whenever the community comes to us and says we need your help, we do whatever we can to assist.
It is a great feeling to be able to help your neighbours, to be able to help your community.
Each Lions member and each Lions club in different parts of the country, we're totally different. But we have core values that are the same. They remain the same for any Lions member and any Lions club anywhere in not just Australia but around the world.
Anything that you can think of that you want to do and support and help, Lions are doing it right now somewhere in this world.
I think Lions need to tell their story. They need to let people know the amazing things that they do.
The three major streams that we have in Lions are the community service that we do for the public, health and medical research, and the disaster relief.
We're out there to help people. If you love helping people, get out and help. Join a Lions Club.
We started this project about 20 years ago. All this gear would normally go to the tip. We recycle it and give it to someone less fortunate and where it is needed in the world.
Being a Lion here in Australia means that I can make a difference to my community. But most importantly, it's inspiring other people to get out and be part of their community and make it a safer and a much happier and better place to live.
Childhood cancer, I've always been interested in cancer and small children from the time I first got cancer 30 years ago. Research is an indefinite item. You can't see it, but it helps so much.
I'm here managing the money and the relationships, but other people are out there raising funds and bringing in community support. Without all of us working together, we can't affect change.
2 more extra hands at any function, any working bee, anything we do. 2 more hands can help us raise more funds, can help us serve our community better.
I went to my Lions Club and I said, I got this idea and I think it's a little bit crazy, but I think we could raise some serious money doing it. And it was to run 100 kilometres. And the club said, okay, if you want to do this, whatever you need us to do, we'll be there 100%. And I'm pretty proud to say that together we raised just over $16,000. So we blew the target out of the water, and I think that was due to a lot of the support that I got.
Through my leadership training and all that, I've learned about thinking global and acting local, and Lions Club is definitely that kind of thing. They act within their communities, but the money that they raise can often end up in any corner of the world.
As an individual, I could only do so much, and whilst it was my burning desire to try and help these people, having an organisation such as the Lions family to call upon to support me and those people that were working with me just made it possible for us to achieve so much more.
You know, after the devastation, to come back into the community, you know, you were shattered by what you saw. You know, no police station, no post office, no petrol station, you know, no kindergarten. There was nothing here.
And all that water with an
I don't know that I've ever seen as much as arrived. There were fridges, washing machines, dryers. There was toasters, jugs, just everything.
To be invited to be a part of Lions just opened up a whole new world to me. A world that provided a structured organisation that could see that the hours that I volunteered could achieve so much more.
I think Lions is a wonderful organisation. The people in it have charity in their hearts.
I can go anywhere in this country, see somebody with a Lions badge, walk up to them and say, "G'day, you got a friend."
Never once in my life had I had a group of people where I could go to, say anything, and know that no matter what, they would be there, they would stand by me.
It's the family. That's what we call it. It's the Lions family. Without Lions, I think I'd be lost now because they've been my life.
We work hard, but the most important thing is we have fun.
The fellowship of all the members of the club, the broader community, it's just a tremendous organisation to belong to. You know, I'll be here till I die.
It is extremely rewarding and gratifying to be a part of an organisation that can spread its support so far and wide.
More members means more hands, means more support to the community.
I would encourage everyone just to give it a go and see if it is for them, because the return that you get for giving to others is amazing.
Get out there, do something wonderful, be part of this fantastic organisation.
They say there's a chance I could die in a car crash, maybe even from heart disease, maybe even skin cancer.
I could die in a work-related accident, or I could die in a fight.
The fact is, the biggest cause of death for men in my age group is suicide.
Please don't let this happen to me.
You can do something. Lifeline believes that suicide is mostly preventable. Help us save lives. Find out what you can do at lifeline.org.au.
MELfeed.video is about to close operations for tonight, but we'll be back with you next Wednesday evening. In the meantime, here is a selection of programs that will be seen on our next scheduled web stream. You are welcome to visit our website at MELfeed.video for further details of this project. Until next time, from all of us at MELfeed.video, we wish you a very good night.